This brings us to a very popular segment of our show on real estate. Jay is going to be here with us in the studio and is going to tell us what's happening in the world of real estate. So thank you for being here once again, Jay.
Good to be here always, Molly.
All right, so tell us what's happening in the world of real estate.
Well, sales dipped in November from a year ago, while selling prices increased.
Okay.
The question is why and what happened?
All right.
Great. Well, actually, this is exactly what our government wanted to see happen as far as the real estate economy as a whole. Till about June, prices and sales were going gung-ho.
Okay.
But remember this, for all of us concerned, all of us, not the realtors, the buyers, the sellers, you name it, we want to see a strong, healthy economy, don't we?
Absolutely.
And a ship that's going so fast would have to stall and just, maybe even stall and go into a downturn. And nobody wants that.
No one does.
So our government actually brought in some stringent rules on mortgages. So what actually happened is this. In the month of November, we saw specifically 5,793 homes that actually sold, which is down 16%. Now, when you say down, it's always down from a year ago. So this was from November 2011.
Was it because there were fewer homes on the market or because the fewer homes sold?
Fewer homes sold.
Okay.
Which is a good point because the number of homes on the market actually are a little bit more, not a whole lot more. So it's just a tad bit more, which is why we just to digress, which I'll talk more next week. But 2013 will look a lot like 2012.
All right.
Because the number of homes were just a little bit extra, but the number of sales did dip.
Okay, now the most important thing that people want to know is what's happening to the prices of homes.
Well, they actually have still been going up.
All right.
Even though we saw a 16% dip in the actual number of sales, however, you see what happened is the detached homes in Toronto, even though the price went up, the number of sales increased dramatically, though the price came below $1 million. As a result of that, the inventory in those segments have actually decreased. And that's creating an upswing for detached properties, bungalows, you name it, out there, and it's looking good.
All right.
If you're a seller.
All right. And what if you're a buyer?
Well, if you're a buyer, don't forget this. Even though the bank interest rate for a 5-year fixed, that's what you call a rack rate, is 5.24. I got a client of mine last week from one of the major financial institutions in Canada, a 5-year fixed mortgage. Now hear this, a 5-year fixed for 3.09. Now, going back 22 years ago when I first began in real estate, that's like a 25% decrease in interest rates. So for a buyer, you're still laughing. Don't look at just the price, look at the monthly payment. What if the price tomorrow came down 100,000, interest rates went up 2%, that would actually be worse. But let me explain something very important. The reason the prices actually went up and the sales came down is because Government of Canada made the lending rules stricter. To be specific.
I know, because there are a lot of people who were concerned about it, that it was going to affect the real estate market, but in your opinion, it has not
really
affected it adversely.
No.
It has had a positive effect.
It is. I mean, before it was a red hot market. Today it's a red hot market. Think about it. I mean, we had 5,000, almost 800 homes sell, and those 6,900 homes sold a year ago. Okay, that's 16%, big deal. By doing that, by having better regulations, it just made sure those that can afford a home bought a home.
Okay. Now, if there is a first-time buyer,
yes.
Okay, there are always a lot of people who are first-time buyers. Now, what are some of the things that they need to be mindful of when looking for a home? I know they need to have a down payment.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that can be as low as 5%.
Yes.
You can have as high as you want to, but if you want to be as low as 5%, what else? What about the closing costs?
The closing costs, if you're a first-time buyer, about 1 to 1.5% of your purchase price.
Okay, and then
as a first-time buyer.
Yes, and there are no real estate fees.
Not when you're buying, because you are hiring an agent and who's getting paid by the seller. But really,
in most cases.
Yes, in most cases you are.
Yes, yes. Sometimes it may so happen. So then, this is something that you need to be aware of.
Of course, you're still getting paid indirectly through the buyer's direction. So you're working for the buyer, but that's a different discussion. But the money comes from the flow.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that people have enough money put aside when they're looking to buy a home. So there are no surprises.
5% minimum, 1.5% for closing. Now, do keep in mind, if you're buying between 5 and 20% down payment, it's called a high ratio mortgage. Briefly, they should know there's a little bit of a cost attached to it. Let me explain that quickly.
Yep.
So that there's no surprise when you walk into your lender and say, how come I buy a home for $400,000? I'm putting in 10% down, which is $80,000 or whatever, sorry, excuse me, $40,000. Why is my mortgage then not 400 minus 40, which is 360? Because when you go with less than 20%, you have to pay for the insurance premium.
Yeah, and we talked about the role of CMHC in the last week.
Exactly. So do keep that in mind. But that's built into your mortgage.
And you need to also budget for your lawyer's fees.
That's in the 1.5%.
Okay. What about inspection?
That's not in there. Thank you.
How much money should people budget for?
Between $325 and about $500 for an inspector who should be both certified and insured.
Yes. Next week we will be talking about the role of an inspector when you are purchasing a property.
Absolutely.
And also moving costs in case you're planning to rent a vehicle or hire professional movers. So you should be budgeting for all of these expenses when making a purchase.
$500 to $1,000.
All right. So if people have any other questions, where can they reach you? 647-273-1119, and that number is 647-273-1119. My cell phone is on.